one of the hot new trends right now to hop on is utilizing AI art to create some profile pictures for you, or even just some pictures of like self-portraits of yourself in all these different types of genres, whether that's like anime or fantasy or sci-fi or mystical or whatever you want to call it. And apps like Lensa, which is the one that I used, and I'll wholeheartedly admit, I went hard in the paint when it came to adding like as many profile pictures as I possibly could on my social media, and it was a lot of fun. It basically takes a ton of different photos of you that you upload to this application. For me, like I said, I used Lensa for the iPhone, and it takes all these different photos and it generates like 50, hundreds, maybe even 200 different photos of you in all these different genres. And it's really interesting and very captivating to look at all the different styles of art that it can create just from you giving it a prompt or giving it ideas of a photo of you, essentially. And like I said, I used it. I know a ton of people are using it across social media platforms. And so it begs the question, can this be used for comic books? Can this be used for a visual medium such as comic books when we're talking about superheroes in these like fantastical worlds and galaxies and universes and all types of different areas of multiverses that we can only imagine in our human like conscious, you know? So like, what if we could train computers to identify different pieces of artwork or artwork from all over the world or all over the universe in these different, programs that could create a comic book by giving the software prompts. So that's what I wanted essentially to talk about today, because AI generated software, the main two that I've heard of being DALL-E and Midjourney, are these software platforms where you can essentially pay for it to generate artwork for you. And I don't know if you guys have looked on Google, if you just type in AI generated art, some of it is horrifyingly beautiful. And I say that in a way that basically implies that there's an odd, uncanny valley to it, right? There's this unnatural feeling that you're almost entering into a nightmare of when you look at some of the AI generated art, and yet it's beautiful. It's like there are these landscapes that just span like across so many different art forms, and to me it looks beautiful. But when you actually look at it, you can't really put your finger on like why it's beautiful, or you can't really point out things within the photo where you go, is that a flower, or is that a mountain, or is that a person? Because everything just kind of molds together, and that's where you kind of get this nightmarish feeling of what is it exactly that I'm looking at, hence the uncanny valley. And so this computer, this software, as kind of like what I have down in my notes here, is that it's art by people that's analyzed by computers. So essentially the computer has these different prompts set into it that all these different tech individuals have coded into the software itself. So they create these codes so that when people create the prompts and they say, I'm looking for Batman in a medieval fantasy time frame, or they, whatever prompt they type in, the data, the code that creates all this stuff puts those keywords and those prompts together and then spits out whatever art it is that you see after it's complete. And so the more you type in, or some people have gotten really good at these prompts, sometimes the better results you get. However, we're still not at a point with the AI art where we can get extremely specific. So if I start saying, for example, like, I want Silver Surfer to be fighting Galactus and throwing a sonic beam through his head or something, the AI will not be able to create that exact image that I'm looking for. it will start to pull from all different types of, like, if I say a solar thing, it might bring in a sun somewhere, so it's going to pull different things. And it's not yet to a point where I could create a specific image of how I want individuals to be portrayed, or how I want their anatomy to be laid out on the image, like the graphic design concept. So we haven't gotten there yet, but I definitely think it's going to be coming here within the next, dare I say, 5-10 years, because from when this started, from its inception, I've already seen a pretty immense growth in just the talent in the individuals who are writing the prompts. They've really been able to determine what works for some of these codes, and like for what works for some of the software. They've really been able to like kind of crack into that. So not only the talent on that side of things, but also the talent of the individuals who are coding the software, because they are the ones who are actually having to create the hardware to really build all this artwork. And that brings me to my next point, which is essentially, is this like stealing art? Is it stealing IPs? Because I know a lot of artists are getting upset because of AI art, and they're saying, well, essentially you're stealing my style, or maybe not even stealing my style, but you're stealing art in general. That it's not, that you can't consider AI art, and that that the artist should be worried for their jobs and their positions, and what happens if AI takes over and all this stuff. And I don't have all the answers, because this is such a new revelation for a lot of people. I think it's just easier for me to pose the question to you guys. So if you guys have any talking points or any answers, let me know in the comment section below. But I really do think it is an interesting concept of what happens when you include, Thor or the Punisher into a comic book, and you start creating comic books through AI art. Because if I say I want a Punisher book based on the likeness of Mark Silvestri's drawing style and illustration style, what does that do for the IP? Does that mean that Mark Silvestri will get the proceeds of that monetization for that book if I create the book? Does he get the money for that? And so that's an interesting thing that will most likely have to happen within the next 5 to 10 years. As this continues to grow, we're really going to start to have to look at, okay, what does it look like for IPs, for copyright, for monetization purposes for these artists? Can the artists lease out their work? So if I reach out to Mark Silvestri and say, I don't have the technical skill to draw like you, but I have a great concept in my mind. May I use your likeness through this AI software to create this book, and pay you a certain amount of percentage of whatever it is that I'm, making from the book? That might be an option. And that's what's crazy about this, right? Is that anyone who has a thought or a concept or just an image in their mind can literally create anything with this AI program. And it's kind of a dual-edged sword, right? Because on the one hand, you have this person who now has a beautiful story that they can tell, but may not have the technical skill to tell it. But now they have a visual storytelling medium of this AI art to where it can create the story for them as they tell it, and they can share that to the world. And now these people who have these amazing concepts can now share their stories with this artwork. But on the other hand, you also have people who are just going to copy paste. You also have people who, let's be real, you could get a 5-year-old to be like, I think it would be cool to see Superman fighting Transformers, and type that into the prompt. Sure enough, you've got Superman punching Optimus Prime, which granted would be super cool, but a 5-year-old could come up with some of these concepts. So are we ruining the art form of storytelling because anyone can literally just create something? Are we diluting the the beauty and the passion behind the artwork by just being able to say like, oh, I want to see Spider-Man fight dinosaurs. Like, anyone can think of that, right? But it really takes a special mind to be able to technically draw that and have the graphic design knowledge of understanding what that looks like on the page. So there's a dilemma. And like I said, I think this is a great conversation for people because I don't have all the answers. And I think talking about this is actually what is so exciting because we're figuring this out in real time. Like the artwork is being created, the algorithms and the programs and the coding is being created as we're discussing it, as we're talking about it. I can think of very few things that have happened like that, where as things are being invented, we are having these conversations as they're, coming to fruition. And I think that's really cool. And it also comes in, to, like I was talking about earlier, the uncanny valley and having all these different people being able to put their input into these concepts. And with that, by putting all these different things together, you kind of get this like weird nightmarish tone. And I think there's a great video on this by Richard Meyer, and he's done a fantastic job of doing some of these videos on AI art specifically. And one of the things that he mentions is that it is so nightmarish. And it's it's almost a perfect setting for superhero or sci-fi or fantasy. And I kind of almost agree with him because when I look at the art, it's not necessarily that it lacks passion because the art is pulling from real artists, right? So like, let's look at Beksinski. Beksinski is one of my favorite artists of all time, and he's known as the nightmare artist, which is so interesting because then when you look at these AI pieces of art, it's very reminiscent of Beksinski. So I like those two aspects. And for me specifically, sci-fi, like Beksinski just screams nightmare sci-fi. And that's what you see a lot of the time, which I think is really cool. So for me, I like it. And I would probably almost prefer it to something like modern comics. Like if you look at Riley Rossmo or something, I would much prefer an AI generated comic book than looking at his artwork, right? So you have this juxtaposition between something that people would probably argue does not have a lot of passion behind it, does not have a lot of love or creativity behind it, and yet I still would prefer it to artwork that isn't that great, which may have a lot of passion and love behind it. But it also, I can't knock the individuals who are, in the tech industry, because those guys and gals are putting a lot of passion into this project. Those individuals, though they aren't putting into this in a technical illustrative skill, they're putting in their tech skills and their skills on coding and determining what these projects are going to look like. So that is their passion put into this, even though they didn't create the artwork themselves, if that makes sense. So all in all, I think that this is, for some artists, I think they're going to raise to the challenge and they're going to go, I have to get better, right? AI art is now going to challenge me to get better, to challenge myself, to start like gradually enhancing my art form and really putting a lot of passion in my art form. So some artists are going to take that route and other artists are going to be like, well, fuck this. I've got no shot. We should get rid of AI art altogether because I'm going to lose my job, And I guess I can see both sides of the argument, right? I think ultimately, I would love to see AI art challenge creatives and challenge illustrators in a healthy manner. I would never want to see someone edged out of their profession because a computer came in and took their job, unless that individual is not good at their job or has disdain for their job or disdain for their fans and their job, because then yeah, this AI art would probably do a better job. So I don't know. It's difficult to say, but ultimately, I would love to see this new way of introducing things challenge people. Like for me, for example, when I was in the Marine Corps, as an artillery officer, we were using tactics from Vietnam era stuff. And so as the times changed, we started utilizing a lot more technology into how we were employing our howitzers, our cannons, our missiles, and we had to relearn all that stuff. And if we didn't, we fell back. We weren't able to be as skillful or as knowledgeable as other people. And that hurt us. So we had to keep up with the times. We had to continue to progress and to continue to get better in order to progress and in order to succeed on the battlefield. And so I think that's something that artists are really going to have to do as well here. All in all, this is such a captivating concept. It's such an amazing new piece of technology and something that we can really look at. And I, for one, do not have all the answers here, which I think is also, like I said earlier, kind of the fun of the conversation and kind of the fun of the topic overall. But I find it super appealing and just really interesting. So I just thought I'd make a video talking about this and discussing it because I really don't. I see a few people talking about it, but not as many as I would think, or not as many as I would hope, I guess. So I would be please, I would love to hear what you guys say in the comment section below. Nothing would make me happier than to start a discussion on this stuff, because maybe there are points that I didn't bring up that I missed that you guys will let me know down below that could be even more of an interesting aspect, or something that could actually be a negative thing that I didn't even think about. So like I said, let me know. Thank you guys for watching as always, and I will see you guys in the next video.